Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Minister, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to thank Professor Agnes Higgins, Maura White, the Epilepsy Advanced Nurse Practitioner in Beaumont, and the team of researchers for inviting me here this morning to speak on my experience as a family member of the Epilepsy Service. I'm sorry, I didn't think it was going to happen. And in particular, of the Epilepsy Nurse Specialist Service at Beaumont Hospital. I cannot say that I'm standing up here to present on this subject to the Minister of Health and to such a distinguished audience was the top of my bucket list. But now that I'm in the position, it means that ill health and, in our case, a near catastrophic event had visited our family. And I suppose I would first, Phil is here with me today, and I suppose I would first like to start by recounting the story and how epilepsy, it came a different approach than Sinead's, and I suppose that's the story of epilepsy. It comes in different forms to people. For many people of significant dates in their lives, but for Phil, myself and our four sons, the 15th of the first 15 will forever be etched in our memory. It was the day Hurricane Rachel struck Ireland, and with winds reported of 190 kilometres an hour, so it is no exaggeration to say that the said Rachel literally blew us off our feet. Up to that date, Phil was a self-employed courier. He delivered everything from newspapers to pipes used in the oil industry in Saudi Arabia. And like most self-employed people, Phil worked approximately 80 hours a week. It was nothing for him to get up at 3 a.m. in the morning, make a delivery, be home again by 8, grab a few hours sleep and be off again, and probably not returning until 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. But it was a livelihood he loved. Phil loves banter, crack and telling a few yarns, and that really fed into this livelihood that he had. He was also the chef in our house, and he was always in his element when he had a complicated recipe for about 20 people to prepare. As because we're both living locally, our house has now become the centre point for both our families, so entertainment was part of our lives. He was and he still is an active member of our local organisations and was the curator of our local museum, and he had the pleasure of indeed giving a tour to the Minister of Arts, Tourism and Heritage, I think it was that time, and so Mary Hannafin always shines a little bit of a light for him still. He kicked an 80-day smoking habit, and to shed some of the extra weight he had gained, he became involved in a community challenge as part of an RTE production under the supervision of the now infamous Happy Pair, and he managed to lose weight and reduce his cholesterol. However, all of this busyness was to come to an abrupt end on the 15th of the first 15. On that particular morning, Phil had started out to work as usual, pulled into the depot where he was to pick up his load. And that is really all he remembers of that morning. All we know is that Phil was found on the ground unconscious and the door he was struck was swinging open. Phil was always known to be very health and safety conscious, so all we can presume is that the force of Hurricane Rachel was sufficient to blow the doors of the safety catches and cause a blunt trauma injury to the side of his head. He was sufficiently conscious, but at least to be able, and this was imperative and really such important information later, to be able to give his name and date of birth. And luckily there were some staff who had some first aid training. Emergency services were called, including the local GP and the ED in Cavan, where it was the location which he was nearest to, were put on alert. And indeed, it is probably thanks to that swift initial resuscitation and the skills of the emergency services and the ED team in Cavan that Phil is actually here today. Phil was transferred to the ICU in Beaumont, where it was revealed that he had received multiple contusions to his brain, resulting hemorrhaging, and to say the least, the outlook was quite bleak. However, here he is today, despite having had a craniotomy, being placed on life support in an induced coma for over 2 weeks, and been in intensive care for the best part of 4 weeks. And Phil has made an amazing recovery, sufficient then to be able to transfer back to Cavan and subsequently to a rehabilitation unit in Monaghan, where he made really, I can say, a marvellous recovery. And I suppose I can't let this occasion pass without acknowledging the care, skills and expertise that he received through that time in Beaumont from the neurosurgical and intensive care team. The support they gave both to myself and my 4 sons as we could sit and watch the drama as it unfolded. With the label of Miracle Man, Phil was discharged home on the 3rd of April, and other than a very short haircut and 4 stone lighter, Phil was in many senses physically none the worse of wear and was probably in the best physical shape that he had ever been. We were even at this stage discussing the possibility of Phil returning to work. However, in May of that year, 2015, our euphoria of Phil's recovery was dampened when he had his first clonic-tonic seizure. The first seizure, and I won't go into all of those details, the first seizure was to be followed by 3 further seizures, of which were status attacks, resulting in admission to intensive care and being ventilated for a number of days. On one of these occasions, just to add insult to injury, Phil received a further head injury, which required the removal of a subdural clot. At this time, epilepsy hadn't actually been mentioned in our life, and as a nurse, I suppose, and he was now on 3 anti-seizure medications, but it's amazing how you can ignore things when you want to. But on the 4th seizure, we were then advised that really we should seek a neurology opinion. We had been to this point been accessing services through the private route, and which, despite the many benefits it brings, we did not have any point of contact when I had concerns about Phil's reduced ability to do tasks or some different feelings that he had. The only person we had at this stage to support us was a fantastic GP who gave us as much support as possible, considering by his own admission he was no expert in epilepsy. A chance conversation with a colleague told me about the epilepsy service in Beaumont, and in November 2015 I made my first contact by ringing the epilepsy phone line, where my call was promptly returned by the advanced nurse practitioner. A follow-up visit resulted in an hour-long consultation, this included education, advice, and indeed simplifying the medicine regime that Phil was on. The session was followed by a consultation with a magnificent neurologist who specialised in epilepsy, and we were then sent for EEGs. We were referred to a neuropsychologist and other referrals for other ailments, which at the time was troubling Phil. The difference this service has made to us has been life-changing, and I would indeed say has been life-saving. Since we accessed the service 14 months ago, Phil has had just 3 seizures compared to 4 in the previous 6 months. We know now that these seizures may well be due to perhaps to a dip in phenytoin levels, and now go 3 to 4 times monthly to have levels taken. A follow-up phone call to the epilepsy nurse helpline in the nurse specialist advising on dosage adjustment. They are who I ring when I am concerned about symptoms that Phil will be displaying. They're actually, I have a speed dial for their number now. One such example of this, when I had concern last summer about a change in Phil's walking and a change in his cognitive ability. Following a conversation with the nurse specialist, who I think was Moira at the time, I was able to send a video of Phil's walk, and this resulted with an admission to Beaumont for blood level monitoring, and this indeed showed that Phil had phenytoin toxicity. As Phil is alone at home for many hours during the day, it is imperative for me to know that I can eliminate or at least reduce the risk of him having a seizure when he's on his own. To date, we have been lucky that I have always, and the family members have been present when they've happened. When he did have the seizure, the phone line is the next call I make after ringing the emergency services, as I can trust that this will be acted upon and advice will be given to the admitting team, ensuring that there will be continuity of care. If I was to ask how the service perhaps could be improved, I would suggest that the phone line is increased from 3 days to a minimum of 5 days. Also, as many of the people with epilepsy can no longer drive, a restoration of outreach services could be hugely beneficial. This is truly an individualised service, and I can only recommend it as a model that would make life just a little easier for the person with epilepsy and their family. And just to finish, Minister, I never want to miss an opportunity. So I would have mentioned at the very beginning that Phil was self-employed and how active, and never a moment in his day that he wasn't doing something. Unfortunately, because of his epilepsy, really, rather than his initial injury, he's no longer able to go back to his old work, because having had a seizure, he can't drive now for at least 10 years seizure-free. But he's not alone, and he is of many in a self-employed situation where they're in a limbo situation where they're not eligible to register as unemployed. He cannot claim any social welfare or disability, and so he cannot access job seekers or any such initiatives. If you were to ask Phil what is the worst thing about epilepsy, he would say the lack of independence, the loneliness and the isolation. I am amazed every day at his resilience and determination. to live. So, Minister, if you could have a quiet word with Minister Varadkar about the plight of the self-employed. This is, of course, in between solving bed crisis, long waiting lists and other such matters that arise in the media. Something like being able to access a rural employment scheme where there are reduced hours would make such a difference to Phil's mental health. Thank you very much indeed.